This hangout, if you didn't notice, is my top 5 most terrible atheist arguments. And True and I agree, and I'm sure you agree as well, that there are many, many more than 5. But I just compiled, like, in my personal opinion, the top 5 bad ones they give. And the number 1 that I put was extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And the reason why I think that is so bad is because, number 1, the thing to the individual, what would be extraordinary evidence anyway? That's the first thing. That has to be properly defined. And number 2, even if we were going to say something is considered to be extraordinary, who says that extraordinary evidence is required for it? Or maybe just evidence in general is required for it. Like I said, for example, if like a man comes up to you and he tells you that he survived a 47-story fall, and you'd be like, well, what's the evidence for that? You think that dude would have made an extraordinary claim, right? But the evidence he gives you for that extraordinary claim is he shows you a report on the incident that happened. There was no actual recording of his fall or anything like that, but there was a report on what happened, and the doctors who looked at the case and checked out the man, and everything checks out. It confirms it was him, but nobody would say that the report in general was extraordinary evidence. It would just be evidence that said event happened. So when they say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, I think it's just a load of hogwash. It's just garbage.
As always, the atheists and the skeptics are bringing out cliches and slogans. They don't really have much substance to them. Okay, so when they say extraordinary claim, okay, what all that simply is they're borrowing from, I believe it was Carl Sagan who came up with that. These are catchphrases. These are slogans like McDonald's, you deserve a break today, or I'm loving it. Okay, there's not much substance to there.
The slogan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, can be interpreted from Bayes' theorem. Bayes' theorem states that the posterior probability of the hypothesis given the evidence, is equal to the prior probability of the hypothesis, times the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis, divided by the probability of the evidence. The posterior probability of the hypothesis given the evidence, will be our degree of belief. An extraordinary claim is a claim with a low prior probability, meaning the probability of the hypothesis is low. As the prior probability of the hypothesis gets lower, the posterior probability of the hypothesis given the evidence will get lower. In other words, as the claim gets more extraordinary, our degree of belief will get lower. Extraordinary evidence is unexpected evidence, meaning the probability of the evidence is low. As the probability of the evidence gets lower, the posterior probability of the hypothesis given the evidence will get higher. In other words, as the evidence gets more extraordinary, our degree of belief will get higher. So, extraordinary claims are counterbalanced by extraordinary evidence. The last term is the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis. This is how expected the evidence is, given the hypothesis. Conclusion: we can think of Bayes' theorem as a combination of the ECRE slogan, and the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis. Let's use a real-world example. In 1919, Arthur Eddington observed light bending around the sun to confirm Einstein's theory of general relativity over Newton's theories. How does this fit into Bayes' theorem? Einstein's theory was an extraordinary claim. The observation of light bending was what we would expect given Einstein's theory. The observation of light bending around the sun was extraordinary evidence, because apart from Einstein's theory, that observation was highly unexpected. What about Antonio's example of a man surviving a 47-story fall? If we think that doctors are often liars, then it would not be unexpected that they would fabricate the man's survival, so the probability of the evidence will not be low, or extraordinary. If we think doctors are trustworthy, then it will be highly unexpected that they report a man surviving a 47-story fall, so the probability of the evidence is low, or extraordinary. So, assuming that the doctors are trustworthy, we can take into account Antonio's intuition that it is reasonable to believe that the man survived the fall.
How do you know this?